Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm the 8-Bit Reptile and this is Against the Grain, my 2026 AFL Supercoach channel. I'd just like to go through my preliminary team picker with you today, and I'd just also like to preface this video by saying a big thank you to everybody that watched and everybody that dropped a comment and a like and all the engagement. It was truly overwhelming, and it's kind of inspired me to keep making videos and keep making Supercoach content. I'd also like to say that being a part of a small community, we've probably had an advantage here where, you know, we're a bit like-minded. We're people that think outside the box. So all of our ideas are fairly unique. And if you see anything, you know, kind of stolen from the comment section or that I've used some information that you've given me, please take that as flattery. And yeah, looking forward to getting roasted in the comments after this team drops. So without further ado, I just wanted to say we've got a few placeholder rookies already pre-selected. We spoke on these in the first video, and it's kind of the best information that we had. It didn't really warrant going over each pick because, I mean, the rookie information is yet to really come out, and we'll deliberate on those closer to season proper. But these are all just in there as placeholders, and Kick It is in there just because we kind of run out of money at the end, but we'll get to that. So I'll just do line by line, and I'll start in defense first. And the bloke we are taking as D1 is Jordan Clark. Now, a lot of people are going to be taking Rosie or Nasiah Wanganeen-Malira if you prefer as well. He's just a little bit too expensive for mine. Love that pick, but I think that Wanganeen-Malira, his price can only come down, really. And we're expecting to be able to get him at a slightly discounted rate. And as you can see, I ran out of money later anyway. But why Clark over Rosie? So if I just bring up this graphic, we've got comparative scores between the two for last season, with Rosie being on the left and Clark being on the right. Now, for mine, Clark was just that slightly more consistent. He's got more scores in consecutively over 100. And if you kind of, you know, you count that 94 as well, he kind of extends that streak even further. Also, Rosie dropped 150, which was the biggest score by either of these blokes last year, but Jordan Clark's got the next three highest scores. That, and it's kind of on brand for us to take guys that are kind of a little bit overlooked. I mean, Clark will be a popular selection, don't get me wrong, but he'll be nowhere near as highly selected as Rosie. So for that reason, I'm going with Jordan Clark. There's also some talk about Judd McVee coming into the Fremantle side and you know, maybe impacting Clark's effectiveness. I watch a fair bit of Fremantle's games, and Jordan Clark is a guy that really gets his possessions off work rate, and having another player come into that team is really not going to impact that. He's still going to win his own ball. He's still going to be streaming up the ground, you know, getting those handball receives. And I'm not that worried that Jordan Clark will have a down year because of the introduction of other people. On the flip side, Rosie, yes, shined in the half-back role, and the rumor is that, you know, Josh Carr really likes him in that role, but he's still probably first cap off the rank should they lose some people in the midfield. He'll still go in there to support the midfield. So him being a solid pick in defense, whilst he is just not as certain as Clark. Like, Clark is never going into the midfield in that Fremantle team. He's there's many more people to go in front of him, and his play style really doesn't suit it anyway. So for that reason, we're going with Clark. Okay, now here's a second pick in defense, and I'm totally expecting to get roasted for this one, but we're going with Jasper Fletcher. Now, Jasper Fletcher for me is a guy at Brisbane and he's at 474,300. Sorry, just to fix that. Clark was at 568k as well. So we're going number 2, Jasper Fletcher, 474,300. Now that's a bit pricey, but if I just bring up a graphic about what he did last year. Oh, I've pressed the wrong thing. Here we go. This is a kid that just cranked 90s all year. And, you know, the concern is that Kitty Coleman comes into this side and maybe impacts his role. I don't think he does. I think Jasper Fletcher is probably the reason that Kitty Coleman doesn't get a game. And even if he does, as I said before, Fletcher is becoming so undeniable that I think he's going past like even guys like Lachie Neale, who are starting to turn a bit of a corner. You know, he's a lot more dynamic than, you know, a Josh Dunkley, who's still a very good player. But I just think Fletcher is just on the verge of just becoming that next level of player. And for that reason, he's in my side at D2. Okay, moving on. Okay, so the next guy is not, you know, is going to be a surprise to nobody. Now, we were all really impressed with what Colby McKercher was able to put together at the end of last season. And he's at 449,600, which if he keeps that halfback role, that is nothing but value. So, I mean, Colby McKercher doesn't need much discussion. He's on everybody's radar. Okay, moving on now. So, as I alluded to before, I got a lot of comments and people dropping knowledge, and the community is always smarter than the content creator. So, with that in mind, we got news that Jack Bowie's actually for Melbourne has a really bad injury and is pretty much done for the year. So, with that in mind, we're going to bring in Xavier Taylor at 158,500 and Moniz Wakefield at 145,200. Now, both of these guys are not likely to get a job. And if you watch back on my other video, we're kind of against taking comeback people like Moniz Wakefield, even at a discounted price coming off an injury-plagued year. So I'm leaning more or hoping more that Taylor gets that role. But with Jack Bowie coming out of that side, there's definitely a job there for a halfback at Melbourne. So we've just put those guys in for now, and we like the price. Okay, so M1. This will come as a surprise to nobody. But Zach Butters at 654,800. Now, you know, there's been news around an interrupted preseason for him as well, and he's probably a reason why I'm kind of leaning away from Rosie as well. We're going to contradict ourselves later with the amount of poor players that we bring in, because everybody is of the opinion that Port Adelaide has a really soft draw, especially early. But in a league where, you know, Bontempelli is player 1A, especially in the midfield, then I would say Butters is 1C, right? Like, he's the only other guy you would put a number one against. And yeah, so we're slotting Butters in there. Okay. So the next guy we're taking, and this will be another pick that might divide the group, is Captain, what's the word? Captain overreaction, right? Finn Callaghan. Now, last season, we were all enamored with what Finn Callaghan did in round 0, and including myself. And if I just bring up the graphic here, Finn Callaghan's first 5, you can see that 144 at the top, which didn't count towards Supercoach, but we were like, boy, oh boy, wow, we get him in. So we all brought him in at 144. Then he had a 104, which was fine, but then he got a 55, and he followed that up with a 72. And there was an absolute just avalanche of people that dumped Phil Callaghan after that. Now, look, if you held Finn Callaghan after that patch of lower scores, then you are an against the grain coach, and I applaud you, because that was absolutely the pick of the season. If you look at what Finn Callaghan went on to do for the rest of the year, at 605,500, this guy cranked out 13 scores that made him money over the next 15 rounds. And in that 15 rounds, he had his lowest score was 94. I don't think there's anybody else, maybe Bont, that had a run like this. And that's not a small sample size. That's 15 rounds of excellence. And he's definitely going in my side. I think Finn Callaghan has absolutely the potential to be in the top 8 midfielders this year. And I'm taking it and I'm sticking to my guns and I'm keeping him for this season. So for that reason, we like Finn Callaghan. Okay, so this next bloke, fallen out of favour a bit amongst coaches and was in the news a little bit, but it's Zach Merrett. Now, Zach Merrett, obviously there was some, displeasure between himself and the club, and at 583,300, this is the cheapest that Merrett's been in 6 years. And I've just got a little bit of a graphic here. Where are we? Okay, so this is Zach Merrett since 2016. Now he's been cheaper prices. 2020 he was cheaper, but that was a COVID affected year. But his average has never ever dropped under 100 since 2016. Yes, he's getting a little bit on, and you might think that 107.7 last year. It's a blip. It's not dropping off. Like, it's not way down, barely scraping into 100. That's well over 100 points. And, the other thing is the AFL is not like the NBA where it's a super long season. And if players aren't happy, they'll sulk or they won't play or, they'll sort of pull certain levers. But Zach Merrett is a professional football player and he is contracted for Essendon for another year and he's going to be lacing him up and he'll play his game. So, for that reason, we don't mind a bit of Zach Merrett. Another guy that's kind of a bit out of favour too. Okay, moving on. So the next bloke. And this is a guy that I think will be a little bit more on the more popular than you would think. And that's Errol Goulden. Now, on the back of last season, with the amount of games that Goulden missed, you would expect him to be a little bit cheaper, but it's probably, a credit to him that his price didn't drop that much. And yes, you could say that Errol Goulden is one of these guys that's coming off injury, so we don't really want him. But at 566,600, Goulden's a guy I think that's held value for a reason. His injury was more of like a freak contact injury and not really, like a tendon or an ACL or something like that. He broke his ankle because, basically someone smashed into it. So it's not really typically the same type of injury that we would avoid. So for that reason, Errol Goulden, I'll call him Golden, is in our team. Okay, moving on. So last video, I kind of banged on about this guy quite a bit. And that's Braden Fiorini at 515,100. This guy absolutely has a chance to be a keeper for the season. Is he a top 8 midfielder? Probably not, but something's got to give. Could he crack the top 10, top 12? Yeah, I think he could. And at that price, if we can get a keeper at 515,100, we're happy to ride that. And I gave some sort of more extended graphics on Fiorini in my last video. If you'd like to see that, check it out. I'm going to keep referencing my last video, guys. I've turned into a real pro. But yeah, Fiorini is a guy that scored super well on the wing. Now, that's really hard to do. And also, with Nick Martin being injured for all of this year, I think Fiorini becomes that bit of a conduit that they used Martin, where he'll be bringing the ball, from defense to attack. So we're really keen on Fiorini. Next player is... Nope. Thank God you guys can't see me typing. Next player, and this is another guy I touched on last video, Harley Reid. Now, I'm going to read out some averages, okay? We've got 63, then 89. We've got 47, 87, then 87. We've got 77, then 84. And we've got 62, 69, and 80.3. Okay? So if I told you that Harley Reid in his first 2 years has done an 80.5 and a 70.5, and I listed those other players, that you could argue is typically, he's right there at the pointy end of all of those guys. So the averages of the guys that I mentioned first off were Zach Merritt in his first 2 years, Lachie Neale in his first 3 years, Nick Anderson in his first 2 years, and then Patrick Dangerfield in his first 3 years. Harley Reid is right in that zone of the third-year breakout. Now, it might happen the year after, but seeing as Harley Reid kind of started, his career a little bit better off than a lot of those legends of Supercoach, I'm tipping on a Harley Reid breakout year. And for that reason, he's going in my starting team. And I can see Harley Reid sort of edging towards that 90 to mid 90 kind of average, which will net us some great. Is he a keeper? Probably not. But it will net us some good scores and some good money, so we can get Harley Reid to that uber premium further down the line. But I'm really big on Harley Reid. Okay, so yes, next pick. So as we touched on again, we talked about the exit of Petrarca and Oliver, plus also the news that Bowie is out of Melbourne's side also. That's going to galvanise this guy's position in the team, and that's Xavier Lindsay for Melbourne. Now, he's probably not the most poised to gain from the departures of those guys and the outs, but it certainly does solidify his place in the team. And as far as value picks goes, it's hard to go past Xavier Lindsay. I think he'll have an increase. I think he'll have an increase in role, an increase in opportunity, and we really like that here on Against the Grain. We're looking for new opportunities for players, and for that reason, Xavier Lindsay slots into the midfield and our starting side. Okay, now this next pick. Now, I said I wasn't going to do it. I said don't do it, but I kind of said it tongue-in-cheek. I can't be the only one that's not on Jagger Smith Island. I think you just have to take him at that value, at that price at 119,900, and Xavier Lindsay at 273,900. And sorry, just to touch on Harley Reid was 381,700. At that price point, even if Jagger doesn't, if the worst happens, and touch wood, we're not. Even though we're concerned about injuries, we're certainly not a supporter that wants players to get injured. But at 119,900, Jagger Smith is almost zero risk to take in your team. You can put him on the bench. You can trade him out later if you need to, but the guy's a high recruit. He's basically a number one pick. He was nearly 190,000, I think, last year. And if you're getting him discounted at 119,900, you got to take that. Even I can't ignore that pick. Okay, moving on to the rucks. Now, everybody's banging on about the rule changes with the rucks, and I am too. I'm not going against that, and I'm probably overreacting to the impacts that it will have on the ruck scores. But this is the reason that we've loaded up so heavily on our midfield, is that I'm just taking a pragmatic approach this year to my ruck selections. I want to see the impact of these rule changes, and most of the rule changes revolved around the rucks and throw-ins and whatnot. I want to see what it does to these big guys. Now, ideally, I'd love to take Tristan Cherry, but I just can't swing it with my current team structure. So we're moving a little bit further down the list, and we're taking Luke Jackson as our R1. He's the only premium ruck that we're going to start with. The fact that Luke Jackson doesn't have the ruck forward this year is actually a good sign. That means that Fremantle didn't use him as much in the forward line as we'd seen in the past. And I really don't understand why Fremantle persisted with Sam Darcy over the last few years. They've completely tanked his trade value now. The guy barely plays, and they've brought in Mason Cox as well. Now, some people might be a bit like, is Mason Cox going to split time with Luke Jackson? even if he does, I think Luke Jackson goes into the midfield as those guys are up. If he's not on the bench, of course, because everybody needs a chop out. You need someone that can at least pinch hit in the ruck for 5 or 6 minutes per quarter. So Luke Jackson most likely doesn't go forward this year, and he goes into the midfield when he's not rucking or not on the bench. And I really feel that Luke Jackson's probably the best player in football right now, certainly the most unique, and a fun own as well when he's tearing up the park and just racking up the scores. Like, gee, it's good time. So we're taking Luke Jackson. So next up, we are taking, and we discussed this guy last video as well, and that's Cooper Duff Titler or Titler, depending on how it's pronounced. I'm not sure. I'm sure we'll find out. I think that he ends up being the number one ruck at West Coast. Maybe not this year, but I can certainly see them bringing him in the team like they did Archer Reed last year, where he probably starts as a forward. And I think these cheaper ruck guys kind of benefit from getting rid of the sub vest this year. And Luke Jackson, 611,200, and Duff Tyler Titler comes in at 190,000 even. Now, if he gets a game, he's only really, the guys at this price, they only really have to trip over the footy to make a score that's going to make money. And as I was saying before, with the new sub vest, the sub vest gone, I think teams will be more kind of bringing in an extra tall into their ruck. Now, it's going to affect time on ground, and this is another reason why I'm not really wanting to pay up too much for these guys over the 600k mark. I think there's going to be less time on ground for everybody. I'm not sure if Supercoach has made that adjustment. But yeah, I just want to see what happens to the big guys. And I think whilst it detracts from the super expensive, kind of 600 plus thousand players, which is why I've only got 2 of them in my side for right now, I think it potentially helps these cheaper guys. Now, I could just be wishing here, but for that reason, we're starting CDT. I think that's a better name for it, for him, at our R2. Now, this could be Vicentini as well. We could see Liam Reedy, and that's why we're liking the forward ruck position. And also Kalani White here as kind of that swingman as well. But we're hoping one of these guys gets up. Okay, moving to the forward line now. Now, some things in Supercoach are certain, and there isn't a bigger certainty than Harry Sheasel being in the top 3, and if not, the number 1 forward in the competition this year. He's going to be a highly selected player. He'll be clearly in the top 10 most selected players. The price, and there's talk about his role, might scare some people away, but for me, if you get a guy that you can set and forget at $580,400, you just take it. It's a no-brainer. Okay, the next pick, another one which is going to be a surprise to nobody, is Sam Flanders at 396,600. Now, Flanders will be in absolutely everybody's team. I think he'll be pushing as probably the most selected, if not Jagger Smith, then certainly Flanders will be the most selected player in 2026. We're all hoping that he goes back to a midfield role, and he potentially could be that Jack McRae or Caleb Daniels pick of last year, where you just get him cheap and you lock him in for most of the year, if not all of the year, and he could be another set and forget player for our forward line. Easy one. Okay, next bloke. Another guy we've discussed in our previous video, and that's Keziah Pickett. Now, Keziah Pickett has a really good chance, just through natural progression of his game, coupled with the opportunity of him to get more midfield time in a team that's lost Petraka and has lost Oliver, and even Petraka as that kind of counterpart to his forward midfield. Kasai Pickett through opportunity, and I think I'm repeating myself, opportunity and career progression at 494,900 has a really good chance to be a top 6 forward this year, and the dual position is also nice. So we're happy to lock Kasai in that role. Now the next one. Now this is probably my favorite pick which is a huge call, right? And I almost don't want to say this one out loud so more people get on it. But in as much that we know that Sheasel is a lock for the top 3, this bloke is an absolute lock for a top 6 forward this season. And his name is Brian Myers for Geelong. Now, you'll hear me say throughout the year, if we keep going with our videos, that blokes are good at footy. And Brian Myers is one of those guys. He's just good at footy. And at 508,700, more so than a guy like Fiorini at 515,100, we know Myers is going to be a top 6 forward in the competition this year. So take it from me, lock him in, and just set and forget. He'll be absolutely fine as a pickup. Okay, big calls, right? Next player on the list, and we spoke about this guy and we gave up a bit of a graphic last vid as well. Watch my last video if you haven't already. Is Connor Buderick at 245,700. Now, he's probably a guy at his ceiling floor. Look, an average of 45.4 in 17 games last season is not great, but that's his floor price, and that's his floor average. We feel that the news is that Buderick is going to be playing across halfback for the Bulldogs, and he could be second banana across halfback there as well. And I can see, I can envision kind of Bailey Dale getting a tag, and Buderick really becoming a very prominent figure in the back line. Is he a keeper? Is he going to shoot the lights out? Absolutely not. But he could easily, and I'm sure he will easily push his average up of last year of 45.4 well into the 70s, which will net us some good value. He could go higher, but I'm not going crazy. I mean, certainly high 60s, right? 60s to 70s is probably where Buderick lands. And at that price, 245,700, we're happy to pick him up and pick up dual position later on down the line. Okay, so moving to the flex. And now this is another selection where I have to thank my comment section that brought this to light. But rumours out of Essendon are that this guy, a good WA boy, is actually in the front running for the number 1 ruck spot at Essendon while they wait for Nick Bryan to come back. So for that reason, he goes into our flex. Now, again, this is a little bit of us just kind of stretching the bounds of what we can get away with as far as taping together a ruck line. And it could be a case that, these other blokes, Reedy, Duff Titler, Vicentini, actually don't get a run, and we take them anyway, and we use Blackiston. Now, I'm not advising you to do that, but that's something I might consider on Against the Grain, and that Blackiston at the flex actually takes that ruck spot. So, if that's the case, and Blackiston can hold for the first 4 or so weeks whilst Bryan comes back, he'll still probably hold his spot even after that. And at 295,500, I think it's worth the shout. I think he then gets that dual position spot in that after that first run, and that's probably when we'll look to get rid of him, unless he's going great guns and he keeps the number 1 spot. We'll ride it till the wheels fall off. But once he gets that DBP, it'll give us even more flexibility to run players or trade players into that position. And so yeah, we're pretty keen on Blackiston. So there it is, guys. That's our team. Now there's a couple of caveats here. I really like the Bergman pick for Port Adelaide in the back line. Sorry. At 447,400, but I'm just not prepared to have that many Port Adelaide players on our team. Now, if I can get into at a glance, I'm not actually happy with taking this team to market. There's a couple of glaring issues, once I put it together. And I'd like to throw the caveat in as well, is that I'm not thinking about buy structure just yet. Reason being is because the rookies, which rookies we're going to be taking and at what price really does drive your team and the rest of your structure. So I'm not worried about buys. So please, in the comment section, if you talk about, the round 12 buy when I've got 40 players out, that I'm not thinking about that just yet. We're just talking about placeholders, a little bit of budget work, how many rookies and who we actually want to take at what price range. But having said that, I've got too many Bombers on my team. I've also got too many Demons, too many Melbourne guys on the team. I'm not comfortable with that. I'm also not comfortable with who is actually going to get that Melbourne role. And that might be something that we can key in a bit closer once the preseason games get underway. But for right now, we really don't know who it is. And I'm also considering some more budget-friendly picks so I can get Luke Jackson up to Cherry. Okay, so let's fix these issues together really quickly. The first one we're not 100% keen on is the Connor Budarick pick. Not that I don't think it's a good pick, and if Blackiston does not get up as the number one ruck and Vicentini comes into the team, then I'd probably slide Budarick into the flex. But I'm not comfortable having a couple of guys at this price range. I think that's too risky, and it's too. But at the moment, Blackiston is number one because he potentially gets that ruck role. So Budarick comes out of our team, and again, this is why we're kind of getting a little bit too Port happy at the moment. But Todd Marshall, rumoured to play across halfback, comes in, and that's more of a bit of a budget choice as well. And the other issue we're going to fix right now also is the too many Melbourne guys. And we're going to go back and we're going to contradict ourselves from the first video. Oh, we haven't cleared enough money. Okay. Oh, we're short. Okay. How did I fix this last time? Okay, so staying on with that Melbourne theme, both of these players are not going to get up. Okay, so we're going to lean towards the cheaper of the two just for now, and we're going to get rid of one and expect the... Sorry, didn't show that. I got rid of one of the two. I got rid of Xavier Taylor just because he's the most expensive. If you get rid of the cheap guy, then you kind of struggle with that. Okay, so thinking out loud, back to Hayden Young. We have to take Hayden Young at that price point. At 389,000K, even I can't ignore that value. And a lot of good reports are coming out on Young. I'm really worried about the pick, but at the same time, with Fremantle, having so many injuries in their team, but Hayden Young's at the right age at least, and he's only really had one bad injury-affected season. And maybe the Dockers kind of tried to rush him back, or he wasn't giving them the right information. But with a preseason under his belt, you can't ignore Hayden Young at 389,000. Okay. The other news to drop, and I kind of baited you guys early on. I wonder how many people will get this far and see this correction, is that Colby McKercher has been training in the midfield for North Melbourne, which isn't the end of the world, but it certainly makes him less attractive at that spot. Now, this is where I would absolutely slot Bergman in. But we're going a different way. And we're going with Sam Banks. Now, much like I banged on about Harley Reid, and Sam Banks, is that $438,300 dollary dues. which is cheaper than McKercher at 449,600. So it's a bit of a value play. As you can see, I was running out of money before when we were trying to sort our rookies out. And for that reason, and sorry, as I was banging on about with Reed, Banks has had that, that 63 to 80 kind of third year progression that the Merritts, the Neils, the Anderson, and the Patrick Dangerfields have had. Is he that caliber of player? I don't think so. It'd be great if he was. But once guys tend to have that breakout season, they tend to go on with it. They don't go backwards. So we're pretty keen on Sam Banks extending on the good work that he did last year, improving on his, what was his average? I just missed that. Improving on his 81 average, which was a massive uptick from the previous years, and also opportunity. And Sam Banks is probably the number one guy in the Richmond backline and an Iron Man at that club. Okay, another issue, too many bombers. We've got Fiorini we're keen on. Sharp by all measures at the moment is the number one rookie there. We're worried about the lack of ruck in Essendon, but we as we discussed, we're going to take Blackiston. We're really high on the value of Fiorini, so unfortunately that leaves Zach Merritt out in the cold, and we're doing this for two reasons. So in true against the grain fashion, I've baited everybody again, and I'm taking Connor Rozee, but I'm taking him in the midfield. The reason is he becomes that link guy. And again, he's another reason why I'm not going with Bergman here, because then it would just be raining Port Adelaide players. And I would advise against that, but that's going to be a really tempting thing. And it's even permeating into my team now. So Connor Rozee, dual position, 568,500, goes into my midfield to replace Zach Merritt. Not as concerned about having too many Port Adelaide players. The soft draw, as everybody knows, is a thing. Connor Rozee will most likely be a top 6 defender as well. So as we rotate guys and rookies mature, we'll be able to swing Rozee back into his preferred position. But it also gives us the option to kind of fix whichever line gets the worst of the rookies. So if we've got good scoring back rookies, we'll keep Connor Rozee in the midfield. If we've got excellent scoring midfield rookies and our backline is shot, we'll swing Rozee back there and kind of fix up our backline. So the other thing we need to do is get rid of Will Brodie. Now, Will Brodie might survive the cut, and it could be Cootie here that gets the chop. But we just need to bring in, just for team structure, and this was the other glaring issue I had, just for team structure, we need to bring in a forward midfield into our side. And then that leaves us with 177k in the bank. And I'm clicking on the wrong areas. And that just gives us that little bit of salary cap kind of space where we can bring in someone in the back line that's a little bit more price friendly. Now, it's most likely going to be the expensive Essendon rookie, whose name, and again, that would be another reason why. So that it's in Jacob Farrow. Jacob Farrow is most likely to get the gig there for us, and again, that's another reason why we're saying too many Essendon players at 163,000k. Dual position, Jacob Farrow's in the front running for that spot. But just for now, we're going to bring in Jai Sarong, and that will allow us. So now we've got 57,000. Why is that not scrolling up? Okay, okay, it's cut off. So now instead of 10,000 in my initial team, now I've got 57,600 in the bank, and that just gives us that flexibility to move some of these guys up, and it certainly means we don't have to take Liam Kickett at that price. And just as a placeholder, because we don't want to get too much in the weeds at the moment, Sid Draper comes in there, and that gives us that dual position as well with a guy that's more likely to play. So if I just show you an example now, you know, our backline shot, we've got a few injuries, a few guys are out for a couple of weeks. We can get Rosie into the back line. Say Reedy ends up playing. What are we doing here? Yeah, so anyway, so Reedy ends up playing as a ruck, so we can swing him to flex, and we can also use those dual position players to get Blackiston to the back line as well. So this now becomes a much better team, and with 30k left in the bank, is a team that I'm happy to go to market with. So anyway, I'll stop rambling, guys. Thanks for watching if you did. Please let me know what you think in the comments. What would you do differently? Who's injured? Who am I missing? And until next time, I've been the 8-Bit Reptile. This is Against the Grain. Thank you for watching.